Well, good morning, everybody. This is Gulf Harbour Radio, ZMH 286, Patricia and David. After sort of a decent weekend, I suppose. It was beautiful, absolutely glorious on Saturday, and a bit miserable like it is at the moment on Sunday. So we have dry, though, dry at the moment. Hopefully it will stay that way, and it's just grey skies, 100% cloud cover. 13 degrees, we're back to the 13 degrees, 1008 and steady on the bar. And I guess about 2 knots, there's not much wind at all, but it is from the north, so hopefully that will give us some decent weather, although the outlook is not very good, I don't think. I was more talking to David about to the boats on passage at the moment, what they're going to be experiencing. Don't really ask about our weather, but it just doesn't look very nice. This grey weather is really typical of Auckland. Okay, propagation is not famous from your part of the woods to me. I just had a report from the Arnie Bay. Is there anybody else with anything urgent or could give me a signal report?
This one is coming in very clear.
Oh, thank you very much. Whereabouts are you?
We're just about 10 miles out from there.
Oh, thank you for that. All right, so we're getting to the west, and we haven't heard anybody from Tonga. They're a very, very quiet lot that go to Tonga. We never really know whether there's anyone there except for the odd email that comes. But we do appreciate getting knowledge that there are people out there. Let me go on to a little bit of news. Burt Reynolds died. He was 82. Quite a popular, certainly among this household. He was a good actor. We enjoyed a lot of his films. So that starts the day, not very cheerfully. But some good news for the plastic in the ocean. Carlsberg beer, you know how they put those rings on 6-packs. Well, they're not going to do that anymore. They're going to just put a spot of glue to hold the cans together. Not sure how that will work, but they are going to dispense with the plastic rings, which is really good because they are a real pain in the neck for things that live in the sea. I used to always chop them up before I put them even in the garbage bin, but they certainly are a mess. Actually, talking about plastic in the sea, there was a picture in the paper this morning of the 600-foot big long boom that was being towed from San Francisco. It's going to be put in a spot about halfway to Hawaii to trap plastic. The spot is called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and certainly it is seeming to be a Great Pacific Garbage Patch. A couple of the boats that went back to, I'm trying to think of Bob and Linda's boat name. Sorry about that. Monday mornings is always difficult for me, but anyway, they reported a lot of plastic in the ocean, and this thing is meant to trap a lot of that. Evidently, we put in 8 million tons of plastic a year into the ocean. Not sure how they work that out. I love these statistics that they come up with. But anyway, this great long 600-foot thing is equipped with solar lights and satellite antennas and cameras and all the rest of it. But it will be rather a nuisance in the middle of the sea. You'll certainly have to keep a good watch at night time and in the daytime because it's, as you know, it's a very low thing. It's just floating in the ocean. So a little bit of a nuisance, but presumably it's got all sorts of things on it to show up on the GPS or AIS, shall I say. At great expense, but it's all been donated by people who care for the ocean. All right. The big news for me today to tell you about is arrival in New Zealand, but let me just cover a few other things first. By the way, it's 10 years ago that the Lehman Brothers financial crisis occurred, sending the world into economic meltdown. 10 years, it doesn't seem that long, does it? A boat, this is very interesting. A boat, it was an OVNI 345. It was trying to do the Northwest Passage, and you know there's been a lot of news about how you can do the Northwest Passage, and in fact we knew a girl who went through it single-handed last year. She just got through it actually, before it closed up again. And this boat, Anna Hicker, I think it is, it's a French flag, but it had two Argentinians on board. They took a bit of a risk. They left Greenland on the western side there, went up Baffin Bay and headed west, and there was a lot of drifting ice which they got trapped in. It's evidently very strong currents up there, and within minutes their OVNI 345 cracked and sank just like that. Within minutes they stepped out onto the ice and were rescued by the Canadian Coast Guard. Boy, that was an interesting one. It was quite a good article to read about it. They had been warned, of course, but decided that they knew more about it than everybody else. Starbucks in Italy have opened a store in Milan. Kind of interesting to open a store in the sort of what you consider the world start for coffee drinking. 28,000 worldwide shops Starbucks have got now. That's quite a few, isn't it? Anyway, let's move on to a topic that came up last week on Friday, concern about arriving in Tauranga. Now, this all starts, as I mentioned earlier in the season, with the new requirements from our Ministry of Primary Industry for vessels to arrive with clean hulls. Now, I put something about this in the forum on Git, and everything that I'm going to say stems from these requirements for arriving with a clean hull. Not only arriving with a clean hull, but showing and proving that you have a clean hull. So,
give them a diving mask.
David says give them a diving mask. But the requirements are now that you have to have your vessel continually maintained using best practices. And not only that, it has to have been cleaned less than 30 days prior to arrival. And if you feel it's a bit dubious, the vessel has to be booked for a call-out within 24 hours of arrival at an MPI approved facility. Now that's where the crunch comes, an MPI approved facility. So that you would think would mean that somebody would be able to haul you out and show what your bottom looked like. But of course all this costs money, and not everybody in the country is going to apply for approval from MPI, particularly if they're not in the part of the country where not a lot of boats arrive. So that's where things have started to go a bit strange. If you look on the internet for where you can arrive, and if you talk to, let's just start with talking to customs. If you talk to customs, they'll say at the moment you can only arrive in Marsden Cove or Opua. But if you go onto the internet, you will find that even Marsden Cove and Opua still have their approval pending, which means, of course, that there is nowhere that you can arrive in the country. This, of course, is quite ludicrous. So I would say at this point in time, particularly if you talk to customs, you can arrive in Opua or Marsden Cove. If you talk to Tauranga, it gets a little bit murky. Tauranga folk there believe that they are operating until October 15, so that's mid-October, so if you left now you'd have no problem at all. Until October 15, they are still operating on the current conditions where you can arrive. MPI have not approved anybody in Tauranga yet. The normal spot you would think would be the fallout facility at Tauranga Bridge Marina, but Bruce has elected not to get approval because I guess it's pretty expensive. However, and he, by the way, has a 35-ton lift-out facility. There is now a new facility in Tauranga which has a 350-ton travel lift. Fantastic new facility, and they are in the process of getting their MPI, that's the Ministry of Primary Industries, accreditation. And if you talk to them, they are quite convinced that they will have that in time for a seamless transfer from the current conditions, and by October 15th they will just be able to take over any necessity for falling out. So there you have it. If there's room, of course, and
it's
of course
a commercial facility.
It is a commercial facility, so it would be a requirement to slot things in. How MPI think that all you arriving boats, and there is about 500 of you arrive in the country in this October-November timeframe, are going to A, be able to specifically state what day you will arrive, and B, have booked a haul out within 24 hours. I have no idea. It's the old situation where rules are made by people sitting in comfortable government offices and really have no concept of reality whatsoever. Now, if you are a super yacht, in other words, you are greater length than 24 metres, you will be able to come into Auckland. But at this point in time, there is no outlook for any smaller than 24 metre boat to come into Auckland. I guess they just decided it is just not worth the hassle. So there you are. There is an article, well, you can go onto many of the websites that are talking about this from MPI. Just Google, or you can have a look at what they said in August to me, which I put into the YIT forum. It's a fair ways down now, but you'll see that there is a topic called Clean Hull Requirements for Arrival in New Zealand. What you can do, if you have an underwater camera, you can, before you leave, and it has to be date stamped, you can dive and take pictures of your hull. I don't think anyone really is going to have too much of a problem, because no one's going to set off to New Zealand or Australia, because their requirements are pretty tough too. No one's going to set off with a horrible hull, because it will slow you down. So what you can do is make sure you have taken some pictures and make sure they're date stamped within 1 month of your departure, or actually arrival in New Zealand. So God knows what's going to happen. I remember, was it last year or the year before, when the weather meant that all the boats had to stay at Minerva Reef for about, goodness, I think it was a couple of weeks, wasn't it? Anyway, it was an awful long time. So the dates are going to get rather confused. But anyway, that's the situation. I would say that you can safely look at Tauranga, Opua and Marsden Cove. You can also go into Picton. That's already approved, although they don't even mention that on the website, or on some of the websites. And I think Lyttelton, but anyone who goes to Lyttelton really has to check their navigation. So there you have it. I will keep you updated. The other thing you can do, and certainly if you've just splashed, and I know the Vecchio will be in a great position, because they will have proof that they hauled. So hopefully you took pictures of your hull before you went back in the water. That will be no problem at all, because you can show that you have got everything clean. And it's not just the basic hull, it's all of the little bits that they want information about. So God knows how they're really going to expect you to have pictures of the tiny little through-hole fittings and so on. I can't imagine what ours looks like at the moment. Of course, the horse has bolted as far as the Mediterranean fanworm is considered, and besides which, it's not called Mediterranean fanworm for nothing. It's not called the South Pacific fanworm, so it's not actually coming from the South Pacific. But let's not get into logic here. Is there any questions or comments about this? Please call.
Hello, Lee.
Go ahead, Trevor.
Are you saying that you've got to be hauled within 24 hours when you come into New Zealand? Is that what you're saying?
That is what the paper from MPI says. It says that you have to show one of the following. So you have to show that you have continually maintained the boat to best practices, and that's where the camera pictures and documents from fallout facilities comes in, or you have been cleaned within the last 30 days, and again you would have to show that with pictures if you've done it yourself, or your receipt, or you are booked to fallout within 24 hours. So there's the choice of 3, Trevor. Over.
Well, yep, that'll be putting a lot of people off from coming to New Zealand. I think it should all be done the other way around. I think we take more stuff away from New Zealand than what we bring in when we come from the Pacific.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, but I think once boats start arriving, I wrote a letter yesterday actually and said, boy, I hope that all of your officers at the ports are A, consistent, and B, realistic in their expectations, because there's going to be one hell of a mess at Opua and Marsden if these things are taken literally. Over.
Yeah, well, let's hope they show a bit of common sense. Especially a lot of overseas boats will read something else like this will try Australia.
Yep, it's. I think that once reality comes in and boats start arriving, things will get pretty realistic. I'm going to work quite hard with people here to try and preclude any problems. But boy, it's well, you know what it's like dealing with a large organisation. It's a government one. It's going to be interesting, but we'll wait and see. All right, is there anybody else?
I got a comment.
No, you don't.
No, it's legitimate.
All right, we're going to move to weather now. There's not an awful lot of weather. It looks like it's reasonably decent for the folk that are out there or planning to leave. Here's David.
Yep, good morning. And believe me, Patricia is doing her best to have conversations with these people, both emails and on the phone. So we'll report to you as this gets a little bit more clarified. But diving on your boat shouldn't be that big a deal, and if you have a camera, you should be all right. All the strange things happen out in the mid-Pacific. I can remember when we left Panama Canal and started sailing west for about the second time that we did this. You wind up getting these offshore barnacles that just attach to the hull. It's always on the equatorward side where the sun is mostly hitting the boat as you head west. It's amazing. These little skinny barnacles attach and grow as you're heading west. So if you're one of those boats, you're certainly going to have to make sure you're anchored somewhere and clean. Okay.
Barnacles particularly.
Yeah, the barnacles is what they are. Gooseneck.
The other ones are okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope everybody has had a decent weekend weather-wise. Our active trough did lift north, and Sunday had run from the Solomons to Rotuma. It went on to Fatuma, and it arced southeast toward Niue and then on to the southern Cooks. And this morning, I see a shortwave trough at 500 millibar that's east of the Chathams, and it has a very narrow ridge just to its west, and that's followed by a second shortwave over the eastern Tasman. And over southeast Oz, we have a substantial 500 ridge that is dominating that entire area. Well, by lunch today, then, the surface charts are going to show a depression that's under the eastern shortwave. There is a weak ridge between the Bay of Plenty and the Chathams, thanks to that narrow upper level ridge. So a ridge between the Bay of Plenty and the Chathams, and then we have a complex depression that is just approaching New Zealand. Now its front extends north to just to the southwest of New Caledonia, and over southeastern Oz we'll have a very broad high. Central pressure, it's going to be about a 1029 today. I think it's going to weaken just a little bit. By tonight, the complex low pattern near New Zealand is going to lie pretty much over the top of the North Island. And the Australian high center is going to be over the Queensland coast. All right, by noon today, the trough that's near New Caledonia, pretty sure is going to drift north, and that's being pushed along by the building ridge over Australia. And that, of course, is going to affect, unfortunately, New Caledonia. Now, Tuesday, the trough looks to move on to affect Vanuatu, while another trough, a slightly different one, is going to bother both Fiji and Tonga. So that's on Tuesday. Now, for those that have left for New Zealand, our Tasman High, as it develops, will start to dominate the entire cruising route. So that's very good news. The eastern part of the ridge is going to provide southeast winds to about 23 south, but southerly quadrant winds below that. So there's going to be a period of time where you're going to have headwinds heading to New Zealand, but that's not going to last. By Thursday, the high center is going to be over the North Island, as I mentioned. So the passage route is going to offer up a very nice east-southeast wind flow. So reasonable winds look like they're going to prevail for the entire week. And they'll be tending east-northeast by the weekend as you approach New Zealand. Arrival on Sunday would be good. And all of this, of course, is providing we see very little changes in the projections from the current models that we're looking at. And as you know, I look at a multitude of models. In fact, with a little bit of luck, the following week actually looks reasonable as well. So this may turn out to be a pretty good window apart from that little bitty area of headwinds in a day or so as you're heading south. But those of you that have delayed the trip until today or tomorrow may not even have to worry about that. Okay, looking at Tonga now on imagery, there is a trough. It's a bit weak, and it affects the Hapais and Vavau. So you can expect cloudy conditions and scattered showers, and this may extend through tomorrow as well. Winds by lunch today looks like southeast around 15 knots, tending east-southeast a little bit later. Now tomorrow, it looks like northeast for Vavau, easterlies for the Hapais, and this, of course, creates a little bit of directional flashing, and that'll maintain the convective activity. Late tomorrow, I think both areas may experience northerly winds, and they'll be around 10 to 15 knots, I think. Over to Fiji now, there's quite a bit of cloud visible on imagery, plus a trough to the north, and that trough is expected to drift south to affect the entire group. So expect fine conditions for most of today, with the clouds starting to build up here and there, and tomorrow more cloud and probably some showers. The winds light to moderate today. I would say southeast about 10 to 15. Tomorrow, Tuesday, southeast in the 15 knot range. Later in the week, expect fresh winds. They're going to develop thanks to the building high that's over New Zealand. And by fresh, I'm talking about southeast 20 to 25 knots. So do what you have to do the first part of the week. The latter part of the week, it's going to get quite windy, and it may not be as nice to scoot around to various places. Vanuatu on imagery shows the pesky trough in the northern half. Fine weather south of Port Vila. This is on the loop this morning. The winds look fairly light today, south-southeast, about 10 to 15, and tomorrow about the same. Seas in open water about 1.5 meters, and cooler temperatures tonight in the south, about 18 C, but about 22 C further north. Over in New Cal, today it looks pretty good, but the trough to the south does threaten. So our southern lagoon may see westerlies around 10 knots. That'll be good to get to Gil de Pan, shifting to the southwest by around dinner time with increasing clouds and a pretty good chance of showers. Tomorrow is trough time, I think, so expect typical trough conditions, southwest winds 15 to 20, and there'll be some rain periods with that. Wednesday, the trough looks like it's going to move on, and the winds, I think, will back to the southeast. and they'll be in the 10, maybe 10 to 15 knot range. So that's looking okay for Wednesday for the southern lagoon. So we'll look forward to that. So be careful though, you'll depend in those southwest winds. There are some spots to go hiding in, and I think most of you know where they are. If you don't, call us. And that's all I've got. Any questions or comments, come now.
And for those couple of boats that are on passage, I'll just repeat for each other. The Lark, who are at 2320 and 169, well, we'll call it 170 and 23. This will be of interest to Haven. They've got 13 knots of westerly with a half a metre swell from the southwest. And Haven, who are at 21, a little bit further north, and at 171.41, they have less than 5 knots of southerly with a swell less than a metre, 30% cloud cover and a bar of 1015. So reasonable conditions really for both those boats going in opposite directions there. Okay, anybody with anything, please call. And hopefully we've got interesting, well, we've got actually the streaming working well today. For some reason we've got good internet service, so that's good. People must have been sleeping in or late up and are not on the internet. So we've got nice report from Muscat Cove. I presume that everything went well, and we've got good signal going out, so that's good. And there was something else I wanted to tell you. I can't remember what it is now, but anyway, it'll come before tomorrow. Oh, that's right. There are no results yet from the Sweden's election, general election. It was going to be a pretty interesting one because the right-wing people, the far right, should I say, looked as if they were getting very strong, but the exit votes tend to favour the centre-left. So we'll see what happens. Not that the exit polls have been very reliable lately in different parts of the world. Okay, well, there's nothing much more. Everyone from everywhere looks like they've got decent weather, overcast, broken cloud. That's up from Namina Marine Reserve. Thank you, Pilgrim. So, yeah, not much news from everybody. All enjoying a better, brighter day than we are here. So we will be back again tomorrow. And by the way, you folk that are listening to us, make sure that people coming in from the east know about Gulf Harbour Radio. If you see them in an anchorage, let them know that we update things. It gets pretty interesting once the passage time comes. So don't be rushed to get to New Zealand, folks, although it is nicer at this time of the year to leave because you don't get the strong gales that we get in October, November, but that also means that you will have to sort yourself out immigration-wise after the 6 months that you're in New Zealand because you won't probably want to leave until May. So just keep that in mind. But yes, if you could get back to what I started saying, if you could let people know about Gulf Harbour Radio, that would be good. All right, final call. Oh, good morning, Ron, and go ahead with the relay. Midnight Sun. Boy, I usually have a fairly good signal from John. Midnight Sun, go ahead. He'll be leaving and wanting to know what it's like.
He's going to Minerva.
Yeah, but he might not stop at Minerva.
Your position that you're underway, your position was 23 to 177, is that a rocket? Roger, that's east to west.
Sounds like he's going not going to Minerva.
The rest of the guy was pretty sharp for the unfortunately, but
Okay, I've got 2-3 and 1-7-7, which doesn't look as if he's going to go to Minerva. It looks like he'll do the straight through thing. All right, I've got that. Yeah, I don't know what, because usually his signal is pretty good, Ron. So, all right, we've got you there, and you are on, John and Wendy are on their way. So we'll keep track of that. I'll just pass the microphone. So you got it.
Right, we've got that. And if you can hear us, John, you're going to have a pretty good passage. I guess you know that. You've done your homework on this thing. But like Patricia said, we assume you are not going to Minerva. Not necessary here. It looks like you'll have a pretty good run down to New Zealand. So hopefully we'll hear you better tomorrow. And that's it from me. Here's Patricia.
Okay, thank you for that. And was there anybody else needing a relay? Please call now. Goodness, I'm really not getting. It must be all the boats in Musket Cove for the celebrations that we can't hear people. Toranui, can't hear you, Graham, but go ahead, we'll go for the relay.
Oh.
Okay, I've got there. He came up quite well, thanks, Trevor. And yeah, it sounded like a very busy spot yesterday. And according to Margaret, the Hobie Cat races continue today in light winds, so pretty decent weather for everything at Musket Cove.
Light all day today.
Light all day today, says David. So that's good for the Hobie Cats anyway. Okay, sounds like it was a good fun weekend as usual. All right, that's about it. Thank you, everybody, and we will be back again tomorrow at the same time. And we seem to have reasonable conditions on 8752, but don't forget that if things are not good, we'll go to 8297. Cheers.